This is Professor Frick. We're continuing with our second video, and we're going to discuss inserting values into our table. Now, the first table we're going to start with, and the first inserts are going to be using the create table employee command. If you remember, I showed you in an earlier video that this is what the table we're working with. And so I'm going to create now a new one just to refresh you on this, employee 4. And the way that it shows is with the parentheses, semicolon, right over here. I'd like to remind everybody, it's not a bad idea to put this on another line so you can clearly see this is open, this is closed, and here's the column list. So let's use this for create table employee 4. So we will go back to Codio, and I had signed out of MySQL, but let me sign back in real quickly. We're back in. Remember, you have to use your database. And if you forget what you named your database, remember you can say show databases, and you have a list. Quick reminder, names of databases, tables, and columns are case sensitive. If I say use Frick with a lowercase, it says you don't have it. You have to match the full capitalization and spelling. That's true of tables and columns also. So we're in Frick. Another reminder, if you forget what tables you already have, you can say show tables, semicolon, and there they are. So I'm going to create a new one, the command I just copied, and hit enter. And it created the new table. Now let's stop right here, and let me show you one thing to watch real quickly. The way you create this table puts the columns in this order. And that's very important. If I do a describe employee, close it, it shows me the field or columns in the order I name them and their data types. This order is very important, and you'll see that in a second. So let's go back and look at the example of data you need to put in. So I'm going to copy this. You would normally be typing these by hand. And there's a space here. I'm going to leave it there to make a point, but you don't have to have that. It doesn't hurt, but it's good. Now, notice that I do not have an open and close parentheses on this. I simply say insert into employee values and back to Codio, hit enter. Now it says query OK, 3 rows affected. That means we've done something and 3 rows are affected. Notice that the space here, Codio just simply ignored and gave you a legitimate Codio prompt down here. Okay, now you can see this if you say select asterisk, which is all columns, from employee semicolon. And, whoops, I copied this, my mistake. I copied this and didn't update employee 4 right here. So let's put it into employee, but let me go ahead and fix that real quickly over here. Certain. So I stay consistent. And it put them in there. Now if I say describe employee 4 close, it tells you the values again. So we're in 4, And if we say select all columns from employee 4, we see 3 names. And so we can see we put them in there. Now, notice, let's go back to the insert command for a second. And I will look at it over here because it's a little easy to visualize. And let me take this out. When you input using this format and you say insert employee 4, it assumes that the values you're going to give it are in the exact same order you see here, which is the exact same order that you did with a create statement. So you've got to give it employee ID, first name, last name, department ID, classification status, and salary. You've got to give it in that order. So if you look at this, we can see here's employee ID, first name, last name, their department, that they're an exempt employee, their full-time, and their salary. Now notice that department ID, employee ID is a small int, department ID is a small int, salary is a number. They don't have quotes around them because they're numerical based. When you give it all the values, you have an opening and a closing parentheses. So that basically says, here's the full record I want to go in, and you give it a comma. You do not have to give it a comma after the last command because there's nothing to follow. And again, in the create table, you have an open and closed format, which basically says, here's the whole set of headers and columns we're putting in, but you don't have it down here. That can be a little confusing, but just remember on inserts, you do it this way, okay? So we inserted the commands. Now, where can people go wrong in this? Let's do another insert. This time, I'm in a hurry. I'm a terrible typist. I'm going to remove a quote. So watch what MySQL does. Notice that when you did it correctly up here, you have a MySQL prompt, and then you've got 4 continuation prompts. That means your commands are good. Down here, though, we got a prompt with a single quote and a greater than. That's really telling you that you have not closed your quotes. And any attempts to get out of this will fail until you close your quote by adding it and then doing a semicolon. Now, this is going to give you an error. And the reason it gives you an error is that it thinks you're trying to type in quote, open quote, full-time, 80,000, close parentheses, semicolon, and it thinks that's the value that you want to go into the system. That's an incorrect value. So basically, you have to, excuse me, you have to type in, or excuse me again, retype all of your command. So anytime you see something like a quote, the safest thing to do is go ahead and close it. Now, by the way, this is true if you do 2 quotes. Always look at what this symbol is, and then you'll know how to close it. In fact, let's do another example of that. Let me take out the closing parentheses and hit enter. This is one exception, but you can see that it did not want to process this. And so you have to go back and read up here. And notice it said syntax near single quote, single quote. That really doesn't tell you where to start. So I always start at the end and start going backwards. And I can see, oh, I didn't have a single quote here. The other thing you can do if it's hard to read, because some of these commands lines are real small, you can block this and copy it. Go over to something like Notepad. And if you don't know how to do that, let me know. You can type it in here and scroll this and read this a little closer and see where did I mess up. And I usually try to say, okay, is my first line correct? Are my parentheses and comma correct? So I try to judge each one of these, and I can see real quickly I'm missing a parenthesis, so you can add a parenthesis. And then you start looking at your quotes. Does everything have a double quote? Okay. So that's a quick way to handle inserts. So let's go ahead and quit here, make this a short video, and there'll be a third video in this series, which will come up next.